So hello everyone, so moving over to video number 2 now, so now we get on to number 5 in the changing concept of autism from one to many. So current conceptions question for unity of autism. 1. Autism in different individuals likely has different causes. So in the past they used to think that autism had a singular cause, but now they know that actually autism has many different causes. So two individuals might both share the autism diagnosis, they might have similar behaviours, similar symptoms, and yet these behaviours might be caused by different things in two different individuals. And number 2, even in a single individual, the different core symptoms may have different origins. That's what Happe has called the fractionated triad. The idea that the narrow, restricted, repetitive behaviours, interests and activities part of autism might actually have a different cause to the social difficulties. It's just that they tend to come together more often than you would expect by chance. But they don't have to. They can occur on their own. And it's possible for someone who's not autistic to have repetitive, restricted behaviours, and for that to be very intense, and for them to struggle a lot because of that, and yet still have fairly intact social skills. So they wouldn't get the diagnosis of autism. And Happe has actually said, that these people, they might need to actually work out how to help people like that, because they could still be really struggling. Someone who just has, say, one aspect of the triad. And the fact that this can happen shows that the features of a triad don't have to occur together, and that they actually have different causes. They have different there are different genes underlying each part of the triad. Now it's a dyad. It used to be a triad. Now it's social communication and interaction plus repetitive behaviours, interests and activities, including sensory issues. It used to be a triad. It's now a dyad. Despite a failure to find behavioural subtypes, the current consensus is that there are many different biological routes to autism. So I guess this is why autism is now called the autisms, to reflect that. The autisms in the plural. Number 2, the symptoms that define autism. So I talked about this already, so back to number 2. The symptoms that define autism may have separable causes even in a single individual. So the social, communicative and rigid aspects have separable underpinnings at the genetic, neural and cognitive levels. Parent-reported social and non-social autism traits are correlated only modestly in children in the general population, and even in subgroups with ASD. Many children showed pronounced difficulties in only one of a triad of autistic traits, and there are distinct genetic influences on different autism symptom domains. And at the cognitive level too, it has been suggested that autism is characterised by a compound of deficits: impaired theory of mind, executive dysfunction, and detail-focused processing bias. So different cognitive causes, in other words. Attempts to find a unitary psychological explanation for social and non-social behavioural features has failed. So there's no theory of everything when it comes to autism. It's very fractionated, the symptoms are very split. There are different causes for different symptom domains. It's just that they tend to come together more often than you would expect chance. And when they come together, you get autism. But this can be fractionated, and so each of the features can occur on their own in some people. So autism literally is a compound condition. It's a mixture of different parts coming together. It's a mixture of comorbids, technically, or coexisting features, coexisting conditions coming together to create one. Now, a particular pattern of cognitive strengths and weaknesses should be reflected in everyday skills and perhaps helps it to explain the behavioural diversity in autism. The search for stratification biomarkers to discover autism subgroups is already underway. I think that sounds very promising. I hope they do find some subgroups, because I think that would be very interesting. If a sizable percentage of children do indeed show autism-like symptoms in only one of the traditional triad domains, it is important to know whether these are qualitatively different from the difficulties seen in autism, and what, if any, clinical needs such single deficit individuals have. Number 6, from pure to complex. Today, autism is a behavioural diagnosis that can accompany a wide range of biological conditions. It is only recently that there has been widespread awareness that autism rarely occurs alone. Historically, autism diagnosis trumped anxiety, ADHD, etc. It was only in the DSM-5 2013 where multiple diagnoses allowed in combination with autism for the very first time. So prior to 2013, you could not be diagnosed with any other condition other than autism. You were not allowed. You could only be diagnosed autistic. You couldn't be diagnosed with autism plus OCD. You could be diagnosed with autism plus ADHD. I had already got my OCD diagnosis before my autism diagnosis, so you can keep the diagnosis you had already received, but if this was your first diagnosis, autism trumped everything else. So you were diagnosed autistic, you couldn't then go on to get a diagnosis of ADHD. Autism covered everything. That all changed in 2013. Now you're allowed to be diagnosed with anything as well as autism. The estimated rates of co-occurring conditions in a 2019 study was ADHD 33%, so 33% of autistics are diagnosed ADHD, anxiety disorders 23%, OCD 10%, depressive disorders 12%, schizophrenia 5%, and bipolar 5%. The article then goes on to talk about alexithymia, which is difficulty identifying and talking about your own feelings. Now, alexithymia is a co-occurring trait and affects about half of autistic adults. There are links between high alexithymia and difficulty recognising others' emotions and responding empathically. The suggestion is that it is co-occurring alexithymia and not autism itself that is associated with reduced recognition of and empathic response to others' emotions. And also, alexithymia is common in many other conditions, including depression. So that's a question mark. However, that's still only a hypothesis, because I've come across another article which says that empathy is very much reduced in autism, regardless of alexithymia. So the argument that it's alexithymia that can reduce empathic responses is still only a theory, and it has yet to be corroborated because not everyone agrees with this. But that's a discussion for another video. Communication difficulties central to autism may reduce help seeking with negative effects on physical health. And given the high rates of additional difficulties, the surprising subgroup becomes those without mental health problems. Population-based studies may be needed to find these perhaps undiagnosed individuals, as they may give insight into resilience factors that are important for living a happy autistic life. Although I would say that's debatable in and of itself, because that would suggest that these mental health problems are purely psychogenic, and I actually think that there's a very high biological overlap between autism and these other conditions. So the idea of resilience implying that somehow some people can kind of psychologically arm themselves against mental health problems. I find that a little bit of an iffy argument, because that would suggest there's some degree of choice over it. And personally, I do feel, well, I don't just feel this, there is actually evidence to back this up from other articles I've read. which shows that there are very strong biological relationships between autism and mental health. So, in other words, on the brain level, there is a connection between autism and these other conditions. So it's not about being able to kind of psychologically arm yourself against these conditions, or it's not just necessarily about the environment you're in. Evidence has suggested that these are very real biological connections, but that's a topic for another video. Okay, I think I'm going to stop now so this video doesn't run out on me, because we're almost done on this article, but there's still some stuff I need to cover. So I don't want to rush it. We'll come back next time to number 7, which is from developmental disorder to neurodivergence, and that will tie in neatly with another article I want to discuss as well. But I'm going to stop now, so do let me know your comments, and thank you for watching.